All right, moving on. We have next game we have the LA Rams beating the Seattle Seahawks by a score of, if I'm not mistaken, it was 30-20. And man, it would just I just don't think this was a good look for Seattle. I know that they came out today and fired their offensive coordinator. Um, I wrote down in my notes that they should clean house, but they won't. Um, and they actually just extended their GM that has constantly wasted first round picks on Rashad Penny, LJ Collier, some guys that are even out of the league now. Like they had good success back with the Legion of Boom, but since then, they really haven't had any success drafting players. And I think that kind of goes back to Pete Carroll, coming out of the college ranks as a coach and kind of learning and just knowing what players to draft because he played in college against them. I I don't know where Seattle goes from here because their offensive line is horrible. I mean, obviously they have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. There's no debate about against that, but where does Seattle go from here? I just don't know.
Well, I think regardless of who's GM, you need to put emphasis on linemen on both sides of the ball. Offensively, you have your star player getting sacked consecutive times in a row on almost consecutive games. And then on the defensive side, you got no pass rush. So that's even leaving, quarterbacks with nine fingers or quarterbacks who are just, coming off the bench who are still looking at their LinkedIn account to still throw some yards at you. And I think that's kind of one of the issues with Seattle is that they don't have guys to protect their quarterback and they don't have guys to get opposing quarterbacks. They're not winning at the line of scrimmage. And no matter how much the game evolves or changes with the different play styles and personnels and offensive schemes, if you don't win that line of scrimmage, odds are you're going to lose that football game. So I think if you're Seattle, no matter what leadership you have there, regardless if it does need a change or not, you need to put emphasis on the offensive line. Rather it's your draft, free agency, go get some big boys up front.
Yeah, I mean, I think that their offensive line and defensive lines, I agree with you. They're both um, very bad. Other than left tackle, Seattle hasn't really done anything to address how bad their offensive line is. There was something that was tweeted out by Bucky Brooks that I kind of want to talk about on the show. Um, he said that the let Russ cook movement does not lead to W's for the Seahawks. Their longtime blueprint for success is run the ball, stingy defense, and timely plays from Russell Wilson. That will equal wins for them. That's worked for Pete Carroll for a long time. That's why he wants to go back for it, or back to that, because Pete Carroll did come out and say he wants to run the ball more. And my response to that is, are you sure that's a hill you want to die on? I mean, obviously the run game is still important in football, but when you have arguably the best quarterback in the NFL on your roster, you should want to let him cook. The problem what isn't Russell Wilson. It's the problem. The problem is the offensive line. And even with like even with this offensive line, you're not going to get a better run game. I don't know why the answer to Pete Carroll was go back to the run game. I mean, they fired their offensive coordinator, but I just don't see how turning into this like Tennessee Titans offense with a heavy power running, only throwing off a play action will work. I mean, you have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. You don't have to scheme around like that. The problem isn't Russell Wilson. The problem is the offensive and defensive lines, like you said. So,
Yeah, no, it's nothing against Russell Wilson. He's doing all the problem solving for Seattle at this point. But in regards to Pete Carroll saying we do need to run the ball, I will say to some degree I do agree because one of the things about Seattle's offense is that it's over reliant on the pass. And it's one of the reasons why they didn't win that Super Bowl against the Patriots. I mean, the run game is still important. It's just knowing when to run it and when to throw it and how to keep defenses honest. And I think that's one of the struggles that, from the coaching standpoint, Seattle has had problems with. They've had a hard time just keeping defenses honest, and that's why we're seeing, teams that shouldn't beat Seattle or even be, you know, competing with Seattle in the fourth quarter do.
yeah, well, I mean, the offensive coordinator's out now, so it's a story that I want to keep a close eye on and see what kind of system that they implement in Seattle. I hope it's a Russell Wilson centric one and not what they had going on. I just hope that they recognize the quarterback that they have. Like they have one of the all-time great quarterbacks in their building, and I hope they don't, you know, run him out of town. Like if I'm Russ, I'm really questioning decisions from your organization. Like he needs an offensive line. Um, one more thing I want to talk about from the Rams side of the ball. If it wasn't clear already, Aaron Donald should be the defensive player of the year. After this weekend, if you still think that TJ Watt is the defensive player of the year over Aaron Donald, I don't know what to tell you because I feel like he single-handedly like won this game for the Rams. I know that's kind of like an overbearing statement and it's like that's just it's a dumb statement to make. But if you watch the game for like the whole first half, he absolutely dominated. They did not win. The Rams didn't win this game with their offense. Like you had two quarterbacks, you had one with 9 fingers, like you said. Aaron Donald, I think he is the most valuable player in the NFL that is not a quarterback. Other than, all these top quarterbacks, he's clearly up and away the best player and most valuable player in the NFL. And I never thought I'd say that about a defensive tackle. You'd think it'd be about an edge rusher or like a corner, but Aaron Donald's unbelievable. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. Aaron Donald is dominating in ways that we don't really see defensive linemen dominate, especially in the interior in those, three tech, three eye tech, whatever. Aaron Donald is just a guy who is always double teamed, sometimes even triple teamed. He's a game changer. And I will say, in regards to defensive player of the year, he's definitely first, but I have to give props to Jalen Ramsey. He's somewhere top 3, maybe even a close second, just because a lot of the receivers that he's been lining up against this past year and he shut down. DK Metcalf, he's arguably one of the next best generation receivers in the NFL with his size and strength. I mean, and a lot of people are now comparing him to that Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson type of tier. And yet, every time Seattle has played the Rams, he's been shut down almost completely. I think he only had like 3 catches.
I know he scored a touchdown in this game, but that touchdown came when Jalen Ramsey was not guarding him.
Yeah, no, that was off a zone fluke. That was just a give up free safety play. Definitely not Jalen Ramsey's fault there. Just some miscommunication throughout the entire secondary. But other than that little, fluke pass, Rams did their job on defense.
Yeah, they did.
To hold Seattle to 20 points, knowing that they have, again, one of the greatest quarterbacks and a very talented wide receiver. And then on top of that, you have Tyler Lockett, who's one of those few guys that is really hard to catch up with. Especially
I really think that Tyler Lockett's probably the best number 2 receiver in the NFL. I mean, you'd take him as your number 1, have him as your number 2. I mean, to be able to shut down this receiving core and this quarterback, it's a real testament to the Rams front office, their coach. There's a reason their defensive coordinator is up for head coaching jobs. Let's just say that. I think remaining in the playoffs of the remaining teams, the Rams do have the best defensive team overall. I do think that their quarterback situation hurts them because Goff has not been playing well at this point and he's hurt. So it's going to be interesting to see them go up against the Packers. We'll talk about them going up against the Packers more on our Thursday/Friday show, whichever day that gets posted.